Welcome back to Capitol Tonight. Surprise, surprise, housing affordability will continue to be a major issue this coming year. According to a Marist poll commissioned last year by the Rural Housing Coalition, 73% of New York residents reported that the affordability of housing is a major problem in their communities. And this year, the Rural Housing Coalition polled municipal leaders and found that 68% of respondents believe that housing affordability is a major concern in their localities. That same survey also found that there are generally three major obstacles to building affordable housing: a lack of infrastructure, a lack of dedicated funding at the state level for rural housing, and a lack of capacity at the local level. Joining us to flesh all of this out is Michael J. Borges, Executive Director of the Rural Housing Coalition. It's always good to see you, Michael. Thank you.
Good to see you. I've missed you.
Well, thank you very much. I've missed you back. So before we get into state issues, let's talk about the change at the top of the federal government. How will a Trump administration affect housing in rural areas?
Well, even before the election, the last federal budget, housing funding was cut by Congress, and at the urging of the Republican Party, funding for like HUD, funding for USDA, which the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which funds a lot of rural housing programs at the federal level, was rolled back and cut. So it doesn't bode well for the future, and I think that's why we're looking at the state, really to kind of step up to address rural housing issues, because I really don't see the federal government at this point in time doing anything to address it.
So specifically, what do you need from the state this coming legislative session?
Well, I mean, as you mentioned in the results of our survey of rural municipal leaders, it's really interesting how it reflects the earlier poll that we did last year, right? So last year, as you mentioned, 73% of all New Yorkers felt that housing affordability was a problem in their community. When you even drill down a little further, it was 67% of rural voters thought that housing affordability was an issue. So that really mirrors the survey we did this year of the municipal leaders, who said 68%, right? So 67% of their...
It's not going down.
It's not going down, right? If anything, it's going up. So, what we identified and what the municipal leaders identified was that, as you said, infrastructure. So it was like 2 years ago, again, the governor proposed in her housing compact $200 million for infrastructure, right? That was really targeted towards sort of downstate, transit-oriented kinds of areas. But, infrastructure, it really is the number one problem for building housing in rural areas, right?
Why?
We don't have water and sewer generally. There's not a lot of roads that goes towards, available land. So infrastructure costs are a key component to building housing, whether it's rental housing or owner-occupied housing. So we need to address the infrastructure costs. We also need to address, like the poll in the survey said, we need to address the fact that there's not enough programs that just are dedicated to rural areas.
Because rural areas have their own sort of unique issues that face them.
Yes, yeah. And when we have to apply and compete with urban areas for the same pot of funding.
Oh, there's no competition.
There's no competition.
Urban areas are wealthier.
Exactly. They have more capacity. They have more ability to apply for the grants and match the grants.
When you say capacity, I just want to be very clear. You're talking about the people who write the grants.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
The staffing, the ability, the know-how. I mean, they have an advantage. So just recently, so like 2 years ago, we secured some funding in the state budget called the Small Rental Development Initiative, right? The acronym SARDI. And with the help of Senator Michelle Hinchey from the Mid-Hudson Valley. And there's $7 million in that pot of funding. But over the last 2 years, a majority of that money, which was really targeted to small villages and towns, right, has been going to urban areas.
Why?
Again, they just have better applications, better capacity to apply. They don't have a lot of those same roadblocks that we do, lack of infrastructure that we have. So I think we need to do more to specialize and target state funding to address the unique needs that you've talked about in rural areas.
Yeah, so the last time you were on, we discussed a crisis in some very specific kinds of housing. This is federal rental housing. I think the USDA.
Yeah, USDA, yeah.
Even.
Good memory.
And the USDA, what am I trying to say? They sold the mortgages, I guess.
Right, yes, when the mortgages expire, they lose their affordability protections, they lose their rent subsidy. So we were in danger of losing, there's about 400 properties, 12,000 apartments that were in danger of being lost. Their affordability was in danger of being lost. So the legislature really stepped up this year and provided us with $10 million in the state budget to address that program, and I applaud them for doing that. And we're just in the process now of trying to engender some deals that will allow for those protections to take place and utilize the $10 million that the state allocated.
So will the $10 million be enough to buy those mortgages from the federal government?
What the money will be used for is help to facilitate a nonprofit's acquisition of those buildings.
What nonprofit?
Any nonprofit within the communities in which they are located, and help preserve their affordability. And because these properties are 30 years old or more, right, they need a lot of rehab work. So the grant money can be used both for acquisition as well as rehabilitation. So the steps are, I mean, the things are in place, the funding and the program and the organizations are in place to help preserve that chunk of affordable housing in rural areas.
We only have seconds, but how big is the problem of affordable housing in rural areas?
It's significant. I mean, housing affordability, not just affordable housing, but we have to use the word more about housing affordability, because no matter where you live, whether it's in Westchester, New York City, or Montgomery, housing affordability is a major issue for everybody, and the state needs to continue to make efforts to address those issues.
Got it. We've been speaking with Michael Borges about the challenges of building affordable housing in rural areas. Michael is the executive director of the Rural Housing Coalition of New York. Great to see you.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks you.